So, Blue Jay fans, trick or treat. What scares you most about this upcoming offseason? We're going to talk about that from the On Fek Circle, presented by JFtC.com and streaming at you live every other Tuesday, now during the off seasons at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. This is obviously one of the Tuesdays we're streaming. The other show on the Jason from the Couch YouTube channel is hosted by my friend and colleague Karen Suter. That is Sunny Side of the Dome. That streams at you every other Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Perfect balance of Blue Jays fandom and just terrific baseball insight. So make sure you don't miss that show. But of course, neither the On Fek Circle or Sunny Side of the Dome would be possible without the cradle of podcast civilization, the Jason from the Couch radio podcast. We're in I think we're at 276, I believe, as far as the amount of episodes. That's hosted by our founder and senior editor, Sean Doyle. That is Mondays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find that on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. If you can't catch the live broadcast, as far as the podcast is concerned, the radio podcast, you can always go to wherever finer podcasts are available and catch all of the archives there. I am the madman across the border, the Fekless Wonder Steve Fek. And before we get to the heart of the show, we have some breaking news here out of Jays from the Couch land within the last 15 minutes. A bittersweet story for me to report. Our senior editor and founder, Sean Doyle, has announced that the Fekless Wonder has been designated for assignment. Sean had mentioned to me behind the scenes here, as well as to the gathered reporters when he was making the announcement, that given my serious heart condition, they were kind of just trying to wait it out and let me shuffle off this mortal coil on my own so they wouldn't have to make a tough decision. But fear not. For those of you that are fans of the On Fek Circle, especially my fellow senior citizens and elder Blue Jay fans, Sean Doyle has announced an exciting new platform on which the On Fek Circle will be streamed. It's going to be called Jays from the Home. So at all skilled nursing facilities and nursing homes, people that are shut-ins, that have medical issues, they will be able to listen on demand just by pressing their life alert pendant, and you'll hear the On Fek Circle play until paramedics or nurses can arrive. Got your hopes up, didn't I? I'm not going anywhere. Basically, it's an example of a fake news item. And I bring it up because Jason the Couch radio podcast over the last, 5 or 6 episodes or so have been doing a fake news segment. And really, it's the off season. Yeah, it's the World Series, but the Blue Jays haven't been in the playoffs. The Blue Jays aren't going to be in the World Series. So we've thought, let's have a few laughs. Let's make you think about things, but also laugh while we're presenting it. We've had news items such as the front office and management team starring in a revival of The Wizard of Oz, where Charlie is the scarecrow in search of a brain. And of course, Ross Atkins is the Cowardly Lion. We've had an item about Captain Biggio on the shelf. That elf on the shelf thing you always hear about at the holiday season. It's going to be Captain Biggio on the shelf. And you're going to have to figure out where they're going to put him, because I don't think the Blue Jays know where they're going to play him. And we had an item about Ross Atkins sending an email to Marcus Stroman, making a contract offer. But it was a mistake because he was trying to send an email and an offer to Marcus Semien. So make sure you go back and check the archives on the Jason the Couch radio podcast, and you look forward to fake news segments throughout the off season going forward with Jason the Couch radio podcast. And what was a bigger disappointment this year, Jays or Yankees? Bob, I know what your answer would be, and that would be the Yankees. Though I am going to say it was the Blue Jays, and we're going to talk a little bit about it coming up later in this program. The Yankees, if anything, exceeded certainly my expectations. I don't think they were a playoff team, and I didn't think that all season, but they put a gut together just enough to kind of sneak in there. And luckily, we were just talking off the air, actually, Bob, that the Yankees kind of did the Blue Jays in the AL East a favor by extending Aaron Boone as a manager. And as a fan and reporter of a team that has a similar questionable in-game manager in Charlie Montoyo, you're just giving the AL East an advantage. So I do thank you for the question and the call. I know you're a diehard Yankee fan. You grew up in Jersey like me. I'm the black sheep Jersey guy. But I think the Blue Jays were more of a disappointment because they had opportunities early in this season to react, and they didn't. But thanks for the question, as always, Dr. Bob. You know, you can take care of my health anytime. I feel the Jays had the best roster in the AL East, Bob. In a lot of ways, I think they did. It's certainly, as far as the lineup, they may have had the best lineup, with the exception of maybe Houston in Major League Baseball. They just didn't have the pitching depth. They spent the entire offseason saying they had the pitching depth. And Ross Atkins tried to make believers of people and tried to explain away why they weren't spending money on pitching. But, what can you do? I think the Blue Jays have to be the clear favorite in 2022, unless somehow the front office messes it up all over again. But I'll be railing and whining about that throughout the entire offseason. It's Halloween right now. Let's talk about what scares you most about this upcoming offseason. I'm going to give you a couple items that I know scare me, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure they're going to scare you as well. They don't necessarily involve money. They don't involve the roster as a whole. But there are some things that potentially can cause issues. And as you can probably tell as you're watching this, and it's my apology, it must be on my end somewhere, we're out of sync, my voice and the video you're watching. So if you're listening to it, awesome. You won't have any idea. And really, speaking of scary thoughts, most people really should turn off the video or block the video and just listen to what I say here on the On Fek Circle, because this isn't exactly a face made for video. My broadcast career was radio. And as you can see, that's why. We're also going to have the topic of Alex Anthopoulos in Blue Jays Way. I think you need, as Blue Jay fans, to hear me out. And I think many of you might already agree based on some things I've seen on social media, but we'll get to all that at the end of the show. Let's start about the scariest things coming up here in the offseason. I want to start with the on-field stuff so that I don't give myself a stroke before I even get into the heart of the show. And then we'll talk about some more management things. And I think the scariest thing for me, and it's more of an uncertainty, but it makes me nervous. It scares me a bit. I don't think George Springer or Kevin Biggio or Danny Jansen are ever going to have an injury-free season from this point forward. That does not mean they won't make valuable contributions, but sort of like, as Dr. Bob Herbert brought up earlier about the Yankees, the Yankees pretty much know at some point Aaron Judge is going to be on the DL. Giancarlo Stanton's going to be on the DL. Whatever pitcher they sign for that year to be their savior is going to be on the DL at some point. If you go into it knowing this is an actuality and really something you really should consider a reality, then I think it's not as frustrating or not as scary. And if you build depth around the players that might be out, it's not, as scary. I think that's where the much debated, much hated Randall Grichuk plays a pivotal role, because either he's going to get dealt to add depth to the organization and to the major league roster, or he's going to be a fourth outfielder that's going to play 3 to 4 days a week. So you can rest a guy like Springer and DH him more. So you can rest Lourdes Gurriel and Teoscar Hernandez, who are basically bats first and then fielders. I know Teoscar Hernandez throws all these runners out, but there's a reason so many base runners try to advance on Teoscar Hernandez, because they're going to assume he's not going to be in good position to field the ball. And he doesn't have the greatest range. And Lourdes Gurriel, God bless his heart, he catches up to balls the majority of the time, but it is really, talk about a scary thought, is Gurriel going after a fly ball that's not hit directly at him. I think that they should position Lourdes Gurriel 6 feet away from the center fielder at all times. We'll call it the Gurriel shift, so that he can only break one way on a fly ball. It's going to save a lot of time, a lot of wear and tear on the legs. And I think his defensive metrics will improve, because he can't misjudge a ball or break the wrong way. But we need to be prepared for George Springer maybe playing 100 games, 110. He plays hard, but he was kind of injury prone with the Astros. It wasn't unusual for him to be on the DL at least once a year. And Kevin Biggio, when you start talking about necks and shoulders, backs, those are nagging chronic injuries that never quite leave the player. So my guess is he will be a 400 at bat guy at best, assuming that they actually know where to play him and not bounce him all over the place all the time. And Danny Jansen, I said this as a hot take in our preseason show, Jason the Couch Radio podcast. I think that he has the ability to be an all-star caliber catcher. When I was talking about potentially Blue Jays that could make a big impact in the playoffs, Danny Jansen was one of the guys I mentioned. And I know Karen Suter had a great article about touting Danny Jansen's abilities and his future as the Blue Jays catcher about a week ago. So go back and check out that article on JFtC.com. Chock full of stuff on JFtC.com. So you should be opening that up every morning if you're a Blue Jay fan, to get the real story. We're not just putting out PR releases. We're actually taking time, great analysis to get to the heart of the matter. The second scariest thoughts revolve around Marcus Semien and Robbie Ray. Both players, in interviews throughout their stay here with the Jays, have not made it a secret that they would prefer to play closer to home. Why? I mean, I think that's natural. In the case of Marcus Semien, he's from Northern California, the Bay Area in general. Robbie Ray has his home in Arizona. Last time I checked, unless the Blue Jays have to play in Vancouver because of COVID restrictions next year, the Jays would not be a West Coast destination. Now, of the two, I think Ray is more inclined to sign with Toronto only because of what he was able to accomplish and how he really remade himself as a pitcher under the guidance of Pete Walker and Charlie Montoyo during his 2 years here. But he's going to be the American League Cy Young Award winner, which means you're adding more zeros and more term onto his contract, which at his age, I believe he's 30, he may be 31, will be his last big contract. And the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, Disneyland, Long Beach, whatever they're calling themselves these days, desperately need pitching. They have payroll dollars to move. So I wonder if Robbie Ray doesn't end up as an Angel. Another destination, a place not far from Arizona, an hour flight, I think at best, would be Houston. But I think many of us are resigned to the fact that Marcus Semien is not going to resign here. At least those that are thinking about it and not just using our heart and remembering, his gazillion home runs and his stabilizing influence in the dugout. He's not re-signing here. So I think we're more in tune with that, but still, it's something to be nervous about. I think Semien becomes a Mariner. It's exactly the kind of signing that Jerry DiPoto would make. It's a reliable bat to protect Mike Trout in the order, while their younger batters like Walsh and some of the other prospects, Adele, kind of still get their feet underneath them. That would be a smart signing. And again, they've got the money. They moved Pujols' contract. I mean, I know they're still paying on it, but in essence, from an accounting standpoint, it affects them a little differently than it would still having him on the roster. So I think he could be, the Angels could be a player. But the Mariners, DiPoto, I don't put anything past him. They could move J.P. Crawford to second, make him a utility player. Semien's presence with the Mariners. Don't forget, the Mariners weren't that far behind the Blue Jays in the final standings in that wild card race. They could be a dangerous, dangerous team next year. Even with the Astros in their division, they could be a dangerous team. Now let's look off the field. And it was bandied about throughout the week that despite Mark Shapiro's assurances that, there should be a CBA agreement before it expires December 1st, and that doesn't really affect how we're approaching the offseason. I'm going to give him credit saying he was blowing smoke in his end of the season press conference. I think, honestly, he knew better, or he should have known better than to state that. But if they indeed impose a transaction freeze, if as a negotiating ploy, they freeze the signing of free agents until the CBA is hammered out, that was not the case in the big strike of 94, 95. But if they put that transaction freeze, Ross Atkins, I think, is better striking early and catching people off guard. If there is a transaction freeze, I am really concerned about how that affects the Blue Jays' ability to be aggressive and get the players they need, not just settle for players in the free agent thing. Ross Atkins can't match up or go toe-to-toe with the likes of Dave Dombrowski or Alex Anthopoulos, or in their division, Eric Neander, Chaim Bloom, Brian Cashman. He just does not match up that way. It's like in at the end of The Godfather, where Michael Corleone replaces Tom Hagen as consigliere. He says, you're not a wartime consigliere. Okay. Ross deserves credit for the building of the farm system as quickly as it was. I give more credit to Ben Cherington, who repeated what he did in Toronto and Pittsburgh, and Tony LaCava, and who's really the wizard behind international signings and all. But he did a great job overseeing that and making that happen. And I still take my hat off to him for the Barrios trade. I'm still shocked he did it. But I just don't think that he can out-negotiate, outmaneuver the hungrier GMs with teams that need to either get in it, and not to mention the Mets, who are going to lend a whole different meaning to stupid money and paying stupid money. That was coined in Philadelphia. But the Mets, with Steve Cohen, whoever they end up with their GM or president of baseball operations, whatever you want to call the title, they're going to spend stupid money. Ross Atkins just doesn't measure up. Okay. He's a middleweight fighting heavyweights. I know a lot of people out there, oh, you're always on Ross Atkins' case. I haven't said it yet, but I'm going to say it now. I told you so. I told you that Atkins' inaction in the offseason and reacting quick enough when the injuries and the apparent, the obvious lack of pitching depth that the organization had as far as major league ready pitchers. There's a reason that Ross Atkins drafted nothing but pitchers, I think, except for one player in this past draft. He knows they don't have major league caliber pitchers in the ready or in the pipeline. So a transaction freeze is a disaster for the Blue Jays. The biggest thing that scares me, and if you've been following the story, certainly Canadians are well aware of it, but for our American Blue Jay fans and listeners, Edward Rogers, the son of Ted Rogers, who was the founder of Rogers Communications, was ousted as chairman of the board of Rogers Communications. At least we think he was, because he did form another board that he's been chairing meetings for. So we're not really sure whether he's out or not. But God forbid he has the time to focus on the Blue Jays instead of trying to merge with Shaw Communications and building Rogers Communications into a near monopoly across Canada. The Blue Jays can ill afford to have Edward Rogers truly involved on a day-to-day basis. I mean, he's good at counting money, so put him in the ticket office. Let him sell tickets there in the booth or on its group sales. That's how Gord Ash got his job. He was the ticket. He sold tickets at Old Exhibition Stadium. We know how that worked out, but we can't have Edward Rogers really, truly involved with nothing else to do, because Lord knows he doesn't really have any other qualifications other than being a jerk and being able to count money. So what else is he going to do? We don't want him involved day to day. This is a story that you need, as boring as financial news can be and boardroom drama and stuff. Every Blue Jay fan and every baseball fan, especially AL East rival people that might be stumbling across this, needs to pay attention to this very closely. And the big alarm, the big scary thing that came out, though I think a lot of Toronto sports fans kind of already assumed that, is that he tried to block. He actively tried to block the extension given to the Raptors' Masai Ujiri, who basically built an NBA championship team with not a huge budget. He tried to interfere, and Ujiri almost left because Rogers was meddling, but Rogers tried to block it, getting people together in the boardroom to say, oh, no, we can't make this kind of expenditure. That's bad juju, folks. So we definitely don't want Edward Rogers. What scares you? You can, of course, the last minutes of the program here, put up your questions or what's scaring you the most. I check throughout the week, as does our senior editor, Sean Doyle, for your comments. We will reply as quickly as we can. I try to reply the same day. We have a sort of a loyal group of people that seem to listen on a regular basis. I know that this is happy hour for some bar and restaurant patrons up in North Tonawanda, New York. But anytime, whether it be Facebook, on Twitter, you can tweet me at Fekless Wonder. If you put in @idiot, it may deflect to @Fekless Wonder, but @Fekless Wonder, just go to the extra line, time the extra letters. You'll get directly in there. I will respond. You might not agree with what my response is, but I think conversation's good. Now, Blue Jays way, another tip of the hat to Alex Anthopoulos. Get rid of that. Alex Anthopoulos, is my set falls apart as we're going on here. That's God's wrath. God's a Blue Jay fan, and he is wreaking havoc on my home studio. I'm out of sync. My lighting's falling down. I deserve it. You know what I mean? That's why Sean wants to DFA me. Alex Anthopoulos got the Atlanta Braves into the World Series, a team that was floundering pretty much right up until the trade deadline. He did what he had done in Toronto in 2015 when he had a sense, by going down into the locker room, talking to players, being proactive, that the team was just underperforming and that they could make a run. A lot of things fell into place, unlike with the Blue Jays. The Red Sox and Yankees got hot and stayed hot. You know, the Mets fell apart. The Phillies had one of the worst bullpens again in baseball. They took advantage of it. He made trades. He was aggressive. He got out there. He started by acquiring Jock Peterson from the Cubs because he wanted to, before the deadline, show the Braves after Acuna got hurt, I want them to know that we're going to do everything we can to get you into the playoffs, give you the tools to become a playoff team, and win a World Series championship. What he did in 2015 is quite possibly the best general manager job in Toronto Blue Jays history. And you can get all mad. Oh, he squandered, he gave away the farm and he gutted the farm system. That's why you have a farm system. Prospects and bold type-faced in Baseball America does not win you a World Series championship. What Alex Anthopoulos did in Atlanta, as he did in Toronto in 2015, a team that should have gone to the World Series. And I would say, and many of the couchers agree, they could have won that World Series. Things just didn't fall into place for them. The Royals seem to be a team of destiny. But Alex Anthopoulos did what a general manager needs to do and what Ross Atkins should have done in May and June when things and injuries made it obvious and how other teams were performing that they needed to make some big moves. So Blue Jays fans, show your omnipresent class. Cheer for the Atlanta Braves strictly because Alex Anthopoulos brought you an amazing season in 2015 and tried his best in 2016. That's what really got him ousted by Shapiro, because he traded some prospects to try to make the team competitive in 2016. Root for the Braves. Root for your own. Alex Anthopoulos, fellow Canadian. Root and support what Anthopoulos has done in the Braves. And then try to stomp them in the ground in 2022. I am way out of time. I wanted to make that last point about Alex Anthopoulos. Blue Jay fans and Blue Jays fan base as a whole already know what I just talked about, but I wanted to drive home that point. Thank you for tuning in to the On Fek Circle. We'll be back in 2 weeks, hopefully with some transactional news or whatever it would be. We're always on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter. Sunny Side of the Dome returns next Thursday, but coming up this Monday and every Monday, the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. Thanks for listening and getting involved. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.